All right, dude. You ready to do this?
Ready when you are.
Welcome to the garage, man.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah. I have a lot of love for stuff that happens in the garage.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You do a lot in the garage?
Well, that's where Happy Mat started.
Is it?
Yeah, we started off and rolling in the garage. So
what? All right. I see Happy Mats. I've asked you about it, but I haven't talked to you about it in probably a year. So what is Happy Mats?
all right. So gosh, I think we started in might have been 2019. Maybe 2020.
Okay.
So my buddy Happy, Coach Happy at the grounds, he was going through like a falling out with the gym that he was at.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time it was coming up to my son's birthday. He's like, oh, I can't afford to get your son anything for his birthday. It's like I feel bad. I'm like, don't worry about it. Why don't you just give him like 3 free jiu-jitsu lessons? Because at the time he was a purple belt. And he was like, oh yeah, it sounds awesome. So I bought some puzzle mats, and his first like private lesson was in our living room. We pushed everything to the side, laid out the puzzle mats. We did some jiu-jitsu in the living room. And then it just like started being this weekly occurrence. Like he'd come over to my parents' house for dinner, and we'd put out the puzzle mats and do jiu-jitsu in the garage. Then with one of the stimulus packages, I was like, well, we're getting all this free money. So I bought like I think they're 10x10 wrestling mats, like rollout mats, like really nice.
Okay.
And then it just kept progressing from there. And we did that for about 6 months solid before we both ended up at the grounds.
So was that your first time doing jiu-jitsu?
Other than some ground combative stuff in the military, yeah, that was my first time doing like legit, in the pajamas jiu-jitsu.
That's cool. The first time I did jiu-jitsu, I was probably 20 or 21 at a place in New York at an MMA gym, and I was rolling against like a really small, like 16-year-old girl, and she choked me out. Like I didn't go unconscious, but like choked me till I tapped, and then a bunch of really small people all like made me tap really fast, and I was like, I at the time I was ashamed, and then now I'm like, oh, all right, I get it.
I totally understand that now.
Yeah. It's funny how everybody starts. It's all different for everybody else. I probably started because of listening to Joe Rogan and just being like, all right, let me go finally do this. But like, so how old were you when you first started doing
it? So for Happy Mats, it was like, what year are we in? So like 30, 32, 33.
Okay.
When I did it in the military, that was probably, let's see. So we had a guy go to the Gracie Combatives instructor course and then come back. Mm-hmm. And then all the trainers got together and like trained together for like a week. So we all knew what to teach.
Yep.
And then we went through and taught probably 200 people this like 8 to 10 hour course in ground combatives over like 2 weeks.
Okay.
It was exhausting. We were doing 16-hour days, nothing but grappling. And then the first week we were all dumb. Like we'd send the students on break and then we would grapple with each other for like the 20 minutes they're on break. So that after the first week, we're like, we can't do that anymore.
We're shot.
Yeah, we were shot. So, when was that? Was probably like 2010, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 2012, somewhere around there. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
But yeah, that was fun. We actually had some black belt. I can't remember who it was. He came down and kind of helped us like refine our teaching methods because we wanted to like really amp up our program, make it better than everyone else's. And that was pretty cool because like he spent about a week with us, and afterwards like, yeah, if you want to come to my gym, and it was like an hour and a half away. He was like, you train under me for a couple months. He's like, I'd give you all blue belts at that point.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not driving 90 minutes to do jiu-jitsu. I'm getting paid to do it here. So
yeah, I'll stay here.
But
quick interruption. The China On podcast is looking for sponsors. So if you or a business that you know would like to sponsor the show, please reach out. Our contact info is in the show notes below. Talk to you soon. So, dude, when you're in the military and like these kind of things come up, like where you're doing these kind of trainings, like how does that come about? Like, why does it come about? What is the purpose? Like, Yeah, like where's they come from a directive, I assume. Like somebody, it's like, you're gonna do this, like go get it done. Like, how does that come about?
Yeah, it all depends. There's a lot of the good old boy system that happens too. Like, so and so is good with the senior master sergeant or the captain who's in charge of picking the person, so he gets to go to the school. A lot of the schools I went to is because I was in the training like division of our units and stuff.
Okay.
So obviously, when an instructor class would come down, like, like I went to the CHP Academy and did the field sobriety instructor course. That was because I had to come back and teach all the cops how to be, certified to do field sobriety tests.
Okay.
Or the non-lethal instructor course. So I went to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for 2 weeks and just learn nothing but non-lethal weapons, so that I could then in turn come back and teach, guys how to shoot beanbag rounds and tasers and hit people with batons and stuff like that.
Okay.
So it all depends on your position. Like, not everyone gets to go to all these schools. You kind of have to like work your way into like certain spots.
So what part of the military were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
You're in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get all the opportunities to do this stuff? Like, if you would go learn non-lethal weapons and like go learn jiu-jitsu and then come teach people like ground combatives, like what did you do to actually get to that path?
It's a lot like being in the civilian world. Like, so a job would open up in like our training department, and I mean, you had to put in a 2-page military resume. They would interview people. So, it wasn't just like a natural progression or anything like that.
You had to go find it.
You had to go find it, or you had to put out the effort to get in there. Like, one of the jobs I did was I was the confinement liaison. So like people that were going to jail in the military.
Okay.
We didn't have a jail at our base, so I was in charge of getting them to their jail. So to do that, I had to go through a 4 weeks corrections academy that was put on by the Navy. So because I applied for that position, then I got to go to that school and.
So these were military, like service members who were going to jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, they got arrested. They go through court martial, and then depending on the crime, they either get busted down to rank or get kicked out completely, or they serve time in a military prison.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had to transport those guys?
Yeah, I had to transport a couple of them. Usually we made it up to the unit to transport them, but if we had like a high profile or like an escape, like someone who we think will try to run, then one of the MPs would go with them.
Okay. What is that? Is there any of the like, I don't know, is that normally like a calm, smooth process, or is?
Yeah, for the most part. The nice part about dealing with like criminals in the military, which sounds weird, is at least they have some form of discipline already instilled in them, because they all made it through boot camp.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the guys, it's just something they messed up.
Really?
Yeah, they got drunk and made a mistake, and
okay,
they had to pay the price because.
Weren't you a military police officer?
Yeah, so I worked Air Force. It's called Security Forces, but yeah, we're the military police branch of the Air Force.
And what do you do as a military police officer?
Again, it's a lot of what the civilian cops do. It's just on a smaller scale.
Okay.
So I mean, we did everything from check ID cards at the gates to drive around the flight line and secure, our essentially the airport part of the base.
Okay.
And then we had law enforcement patrols that drove around and we did traffic stops. We responded to domestics and 911 calls. The base had its own 911 system.
What happens on the base? Like what kind of shit do you see as you're going through? Like,
I mean, just about everything. I mean, we've had drunk drivers. I've gone to plenty of domestics. Like, I've had a knife thrown at me by an angry wife.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that.
Yeah, I pulled up to a domestic call, and actually they gave me the wrong address, so I pulled up right in front of the house, which normally we pull, we stop a house or two down the road and walk up instead of pull the cop car right up in front.
Sure.
But dispatch gave me the wrong address. I pulled up right in front of the house, and I see a dude run out of the front. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. And I go to get out of my car, and I turn, I see a knife coming flying out and sticks in like right by my passenger side tire. And I just jumped back in the car and I was like, hey, I need another patrol, preferably one with a female on duty, because she probably wants to talk to a chick.
Yeah. You mean you wouldn't be the first person that woman that just threw a knife at you would
No,
want to talk
that's
to?
not going to be me.
No? No?
No, that's not going to
Did
be
you
me.
go to a 2-week course on how to talk to wives that throw knives?
No, I wish I had, because it'd probably be handy now.
In that moment, at least. Yeah, I mean, all right. So you're dealing with like a bunch of stuff that cops are dealing with, just in a smaller setting. Was it primarily limited to the base itself?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have any jurisdiction off base. I mean, occasionally, like, there was some guy that was just driving, like, he was obviously drunk, like, he was all over the road. And we do an off base patrol where we just like check our own perimeter. But I was like, we can't let this guy drive it. So we, turned our lights on, pulled him over, essentially initiated the traffic stop, and pretty much got his keys and his driver's license, registration, all that stuff.
Okay.
And then we just sat behind him until county pulled up, and we're like, here you go.
Handoff.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can smell it from, here. He's drunk. And then
Because you don't have a jail to bring them.
and we don't have arrest authority off base.
Oh, okay. So this was
So really that was like a citizen's arrest.
Okay. So they're kind of passing by where you guys are patrolling.
Yeah,
This
we
guy's
just happened to be
flying.
off base. He's all over the road,
Okay.
and just so we called dispatch, had them call county, and we pulled him over just because
Okay.
he's heading into town. Like, the last thing I want to do is get back to base and then read a news story about this drunk guy who drove through a person's house or something.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time I've done anything really off base.
Okay.
Um,
Well, and so how long were you in the military for?
I did it for 10 years.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you go in?
I went in 2007, got out in 2017.
How old were you when you went in?
18. I turned 19 when I graduated boot camp.
Damn. Okay. So is your family military too?
My dad was in the Air Force when I was a baby, but he did 4 years and then got out. I was born on an Air Force base, but after that, I've never known him to be in the military or anything.
Okay. It's not like you have like a long family.
I'm not like a military brat.
Okay.
I mean, my family history, like, we have people in my family line that go all the way back to like the Civil War.
Okay.
But it's not like I was a military brat moving around every 2 months or whatever.
Gotcha. Just side story. My buddy Matt, his dad is like big into like the lineage stuff and like figure out the genealogy and like trace your ancestors back and stuff. And his dad was like, yeah, I had this dream one time where I was in the Civil War and like basically like my head got blown off by a cannon or something like that. And then over time, as he learned more, he found out that he had like a great grandpa or whatever it is who was in like that particular battle and like sustained whatever injury that he had a dream about.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had that, but
So that's not why you joined the military?
no.
My great grandfather got shot in the shoulder, so I joined the Air Force.
No, I kind of joined the military on a whim.
Really?
I tried out college. I did a semester of college, and it was just like, this isn't for me.
No. Where did you go?
It was Edison back then, but I went to Edison.
Are you from down here?
Not originally. I moved down here in 2004. That was my between my sophomore and junior year of college or high school.
Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Rhode Island.
Oh, right. That's okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about that a while ago. And then do you go back there every once in a while?
No, we actually, so this summer we went back for the first time. For me, it was, I think 17 years. For my parents, it was like 20.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was different. Like, it's changed a lot, but at the same time, it hasn't.
Yeah. That's the weird part. I grew up on Long Island, and it feels like very much that same way. You've got a lot of things change, people's lives go in different directions, but then a lot of people that stayed there that never left, like they're still kind of on that same path.
Yeah.
In a way. I don't know. It's odd. I'm glad I got out though. Like I'm always thankful that right after high school, I moved down here and then got to live here. Lived in Orlando for a little bit, kind of drove around the whole country, did a road trip, all that kind of stuff. I've done some traveling and things like that. So like, I'm glad I got out of it. when I did. Like I think I would have been fucking miserable if I stayed.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Like I caught up with a buddy that I went to high school with, and he's actually done really well for himself. He's like a food and wine manager at like a really swanky hotel that's like all over the country. So he's like got options now.
Okay.
But yeah, I caught up with him, and I was, we're just talking about people, and yeah, it just seems like if you don't leave, you get stuck in these ruts.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I'm glad we got out too, because I don't know where I would have ended up.
No, I don't know. And like I'm very prone to falling into ruts. So like it just I don't know. It would have been not good. So why did you join?
Yeah, so like I said, I tried out college and it wasn't for me. And I knew I had to do something, like
Can't just sit there.
yeah, I wasn't just gonna like freeload off my parents.
Yeah.
So like, I always had in my mind, coming out of high school is, go to college or go to the military.
Yep.
So yeah, after I realized college wasn't working out for me, and I wasn't talented enough to make it as a musician, I was like, oh, I'll join the military. So I started researching it and decided, Air Force was probably the way to go.
Okay.
And that's how I got there.
All right. Nice. And then you ended up staying in there for 10 years. Do you play music?
I haven't touched the guitar in probably 15 years at this point.
Really?
Yeah. I used to.
Got one in there. You want to jam?
I don't know if I could jam at this point.
Play a little smoke on the water.
I think the last time I played guitar, I think I was deployed in Kuwait, and there's like 3 of us that played, and we all played for a little bit. And I don't think I've played since.
Really?
Kuwait was like 2009.
Dude, what was it like being deployed over there?
It's different. So I had 3 deployments. My first one was to Iraq. Then I went to Kuwait and Kyrgyzstan, which are more permissive environments.
Okay.
Because like Kuwait wants us there, because then their military doesn't have to do anything.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. But it was funny, like being such a young guy going, because I got to my home station. So I was stationed at Travis in California. I got there in like, I think it was end of August of 2007. And I was leaving for Iraq in January of 2008. So like,
okay,
I was
a few months,
pretty new.
Yep.
And 2 of those months were spent in Washington State training for our trip. So like, really, I didn't even know how to do my job back home, but I was deploying to Iraq. Did that tour, came back, and I was in the like the truck carrying all the bags with our unit deployment manager. And he was like, oh, how's your deployment? I was like, it's good. He's like, you ready to deploy again? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you want to go next month? Or not, it wasn't that quick turnaround. He's like, I can get you out the door in a couple months. So I got back, and I think I was here for a month, went away for training for a couple weeks, was back for another month, and then I was in Kuwait for another deployment. And it was just funny, like going from Iraq, where like there's a real threat, like we're getting rocket attacks, and I was dealing with detainees, so dudes that we picked up, like in my compound we had like Saddam's cousin and stuff like that, like
high target people.
Yeah, some high target people, like Chemical Ali was in the compound when I was there, like some like bad dudes. And then I go to Kuwait, and these guys are acting like we're on the front lines, and like they're trying to make us wear like our full kit 24/7. And I'm like, whoa, pump your brakes.
Guys, I was just there.
I was like, this is Kuwait. It's like the last time someone got shot here, it was like 2 service members messing around or something like that. So
really?
Yeah, it was weird. Cause I had this, like right off the bat, I had this mentality of like being somewhere where, like literally I could just get blown up one day, cause you might never hear the rocket coming. And then, I'm in this like 51st state.
Yeah.
It's just desert.
Yeah.
So
what is that feeling like, just being out there in the spot, like basically in a war zone where you kind of could get shot or blown up kind of at any time?
Yeah. So there was one day, it was like one of my days off, which were far and in between, but I remember coming out of the tent, and like like in my mind, I just like, like remember Google Earth? Like I just pictured me like zooming out from me in Google Earth and like being like, in Iraq. I'm like how'd I get here? Like what led to this? But luckily, like, I had a pretty strong faith, and I knew that if something were going to happen to me, I knew where I was going.
Yeah.
I knew what my end was going to be. It was just, whatever his timing was going to be. I was hoping I wasn't going to get blown up in Iraq, but if that's what was in the books, then
Yeah.
so I never really had a bad thought about it. Like I wasn't like, I didn't have a superhero complex either, where I was like, oh, I can't die.
Sure.
It's like, no, I knew it was real, but
you can be at peace with it.
yeah, like I'm not worried about dying necessarily. At the time, I was single.
Okay.
Like, my parents would be upset, but they'd get a nice life insurance check from the military for me.
Yeah, it's funny that that's how you think at that time, and then when you have kids, it's like, yeah. Now it's like, oh man, that's way different.
Yeah, no, like just the other morning, I was driving home from work, and there was that fatal wreck on 75. I was like, man, like, what if that was like me? Like that's it, lights out.
Well, dude, we're out here on this road, like coming out through all these like back roads and stuff, and there's big curves. Like there's a decent amount of, there's been people in this neighborhood that have died just like head-on collision, like right there. It's fucking, that's it.
Yeah,
dude, I think about that stuff all the time now. You know what I think about too? Like, and now that I have a kid, is like, I have these crazy thoughts in my head of like, what if somebody just attacks me right now, and I'm gonna like, what you would have to do to like fight a person. Like if somebody were like come after my daughter or my wife or something, like you'd have to fucking kill them or like close at least. Like now that I'm a dad, like I think through all of those things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It'll come up at random times too. Like sometimes I'll just be standing there, like, or you'll be in the shower or you'll like be in the middle of doing something and I'll just like kind of freeze for maybe like 20 seconds. And then I'm like, shit, all right, just act cool. Just act normal. Like don't act like you're just thinking of like what you might have to do if you had to like rip somebody's throat out or something.
Yeah.
Like
no, for sure. I've had those thoughts too. And then have you read the book The Terminal List?
No.
Okay. So it's a great book by Jack Carr about this Navy SEAL whose family gets killed in like this conspiracy.
Okay.
And he goes nuts and starts like murking people.
Okay.
And my kids like watched the preview for it because they, I have all the books, and then I've watched now it's an Amazon Prime series.
Is that with the guy from The Office?
Yeah. No, not The Office. That one's Jack Ryan. This one's got Chris Pratt in it.
Okay.
Got it. But I think they ended up like watching the trailer for it because they're like, oh, Dad likes this show or whatever, and my son's like, what was that? I'm like, that's just what Dad would do if someone hurt one of y'all. Like I would, like if someone, well, maybe not hurt. I don't think I would straight murder like tens of hundreds of people. But like, if like my daughter got kidnapped or something, or, like one of my kids got killed, and like, I don't know if I'd be able to hold back, man. I'd lose it.
Yeah, dude. And that's why I think now I realize like why Taken is so popular. That's like 50 Shades of Grey for dads, dude. That's like for women when they watch 50 Shades of Grey and like, this is what I would imagine is what happened. Taken is for dads.
Yeah.
What that is. Like if somebody took my daughter, I would I don't know how, but I'd suddenly learn how to hack into people's phones and shit and track them down.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would just
magically have like 4 different passports so I could like get into different countries, and
I'd know how to hotwire cars. I'd have access to grenades. I'd do all of it, dude.
Absolutely.
I don't know how, but that's it. I know that if somebody ties me up to a pipe or something, I'm fucking breaking out, dude. I'm going to shock their nutsack.
Yeah, for sure.
With a car battery.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever you got to do. I don't know. Like you know what I'm talking about though. Like you get that feeling of like fucking pure rage.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So like when Dad's mad that you like threw something behind this cabinet, that's where I'm at right now. She's 2, almost 2. So she's just oh, I like, here's my toothbrush. Let me throw it behind this cabinet so you can't reach it or it's very difficult, and like do dangerous shit like that.
Yeah.
It's like when dad gets pissed at that, let him be pissed at that, because on the flip side of that is like, it's like pure love that could be turned into like pure rage and fury.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Which I guess actually kind of goes into better protectors. Like, I think about these things just as if I was in these situations of like, all right, well, I try to read the room sometimes and see like if there's danger around. I'm like, okay, like, do I have to move them along? If I'm by myself, it's a lot different than if my family's there.
Right.
So can we go into like, what is better protectors? And then, yeah, what do you guys teach people in different scenarios? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So Better Protectors is a company that my business partner Alan and I started. I think it was last year. I'm so bad with dates.
It's all right.
Yeah, but we have a very similar background. He was Army MP. Our timelines don't really match up because he is as old as my dad, but like he was Army MP, and then he's done a lot of law enforcement work and stuff like that. Me being Air Force Security Forces, also brand like a police force. When I got out, though, I took a different route, started down the medical field, went to EMT school. Now I'm an RN. But we both have a very security-focused mindset.
Okay.
So for a long time, I mean, I got linked up with him in 2017 when we first moved down here, doing some church security stuff. And then we started, or he had already started, I started helping out with doing like trainings. We have it's called the Safe Church Consortium down here in Southwest Florida. Excuse me. And at the time, we were doing monthly trainings for free. We'd meet somewhere, give an hour of training, and have donuts and coffee, talk, intermingle. And that was for any church, any house of worship. We didn't care what your faith or religion was. We just want your people to be protected.
And so, what goes into those seminars?
Well, honestly, we kind of do it, by request. So usually our January meeting is a planning meeting. So we throw a bunch of topics up on the board and then we vote on them. Some of the recurring ones are like situational awareness, verbal de-escalation, physical security. Active shooter has been one that's been brought up a couple times. Stop the bleed training.
Okay.
Sometimes they want like policies and procedures, which is super boring. And usually gets swapped out for something else before the training actually happens. But
okay,
so
this is just it's not just active shooter situations. This is like security, de-escalation. These are a bunch of different factors of securing a location, making sure that people are protected. Like, it's not just one facet of it.
Yeah, no, it's not like we just train like, oh, what happens if a guy comes in with a gun?
Okay.
Like for churches, we do scenarios with, someone just disrupting your service, like
some of these people you see on like on Instagram or something where somebody comes in and is like, it's like a political, like,
usually political agenda, or,
okay.
And there's been some really intricate ones where they actually like hijack the microphones and stuff like that. Like they like tap into the frequency so they can take over the microphone frequency and stuff. And
really?
Yeah. So, and we talk about like worst case scenario, what happened, or even if they just grab a mic.
Yeah.
You have to have communication with your audio engineers to shut down, their mic and start playing music or something like that, dim the house lights so they don't see what happens and get the guy, out.
Okay.
So, and we also talk about like what happens when you have to evacuate your building with kids. The fire alarm goes off. What do you need to do with your children?
Yeah.
What do you need to do with adults? Because honestly, evacuating adults is harder than evacuating kids.
Yeah. People don't want to listen. They want to go like, yeah. So in that case, like what's like something that would happen? Like why are adults harder to evacuate than kids?
Because adults know stuff and they think they know the right stuff.
Okay.
And we talk about it too. So like we categorize, 3 people to watch out for when you're evacuating. And it's, like the frozen sheep, like the person that's just, in fight and flight, they
They're
fight,
just
flight, freeze. They just froze. They don't know what to do.
okay.
Then you have the panic gazelle, we call them, the person that's just like losing their mind, running out around the chicken with their head cut off. And then you have the I forgot what he call them, like the misguided hero or the hero. And your job with him is just make sure that person's doing the right thing, and then just let them keep going.
Yeah.
Or if he's not doing the right thing, then redirect them and try to help him. Have you do the right thing.
Okay.
But and then of course we were just talking about it. Like if a fire alarm goes off and your kid's across a building, what are you going to do as a dad?
Run there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we talk about that too, because, and we kind of use the situation like, if a dad comes and grabs their kid and disappears, and now you evacuate all the kids out and do your accountability, and you're like, oh no, I'm missing a kid. Someone like me, like I'm not going to leave that building until the kid's found.
Yep.
Or until the firefighters drag me out.
Yep.
So like now you're putting me at risk because I'm going to try to find your kid who's at the McDonald's drive-thru eating chicken nuggets. So that's another reason.
Okay.
Because it's not even just like, oh, we want to make sure everyone gets out safely. It's like if we don't know your kid isn't safe, like I'm gonna be in there until I pass out from smoke inhalation trying to find your darn kid. And
yeah.
And like I said, you snagged them in the chaos, and now we don't know.
Okay. So damn. All right. So what a like a church, let's say like one of the ones that's here in Estero or Fort Myers, like if you've got a decent sized service room and then you've got the kind of daycare section where if you go into the service, they have kids in that section, like what are some of the things that they typically have in place, or is it common for them to not have anything in place? What do you see?
I mean, for the most part, a lot of churches take the safety of children pretty seriously at this point. I don't think I've been to a church, and I've been to a handful in the local area, and typically they all have some sort of accountability system. So like, you pick up your kid and you have to scan a barcode, or you have to exchange like a sticker or something like that to get your kid back.
Yep.
And then usually they're secured somehow. Like it's not just like open for anyone to mosey down.
Sure.
A lot of places will be like, if you don't have like the little like parent sticker, then you're not coming in the back, which I approve.
Yeah, I think that's
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, I haven't seen anything not in place necessarily.
Is it more just like, hey, we don't know what to do on the next level, like that next level of detail? Like, yeah, we know how to make sure that we have the kids accounted for, but if there's a fire and there's like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. So like, actually we were just at a church up in Venice, and we helped them kind of formulate their evacuation plan.
Okay.
Because they were like, yeah, just go to the nearest exit, which works for, most situations. But like when you have classrooms full of kids and like you're trying to evacuate, in an organized fashion, just running for the nearest door isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So, we kind of brought up some points like, if you're evacuating kids, you want to evacuate them, in an orderly fashion. Chances are they're learning this stuff in school already. So just build off of that.
Okay.
And then evacuate them all to the same spot. That way the parents only have to go to one spot to get their kid.
Okay.
And it just limits some of the panic and, freaking out parents running around trying to find all their kids.
Yeah. If all the kids go to the same spot, it's easier to account for everybody. It's like less likely that you would be like, oh my God, my kid's missing, but they're just they're just on the other side of the building type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So trying to get them all in the same place. I would say one of the biggest concerns outside of losing a kid in a situation like that would be like parental disputes. So like, parents are going through a divorce, but the mom knows that dad brings his kid to church every Sunday, or vice versa, whatever the case may be. So then, if you have a 4-year-old kid and dad walks in, the kid's gonna be like, oh, dad.
Yep.
And it's being firm on that accountability process of being like, no, you don't have the sticker to pick up the kid. So,
Yep.
And like church safety and security teams aren't there to interpret, the law and, be like, oh, we are enforcing this restraining order, but more so to de-escalate the situation until we can get, a law enforcement officer in there
to do what they need to do.
Yeah, to take care of business.
So like how often do things like this happen?
I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but often enough that, you know, there are now churches out there willing to pay for trainers like Alan and I to come in and help their teams, you know, get organized and
Okay.
stay up to date on, you know, on some of those perishable skills like verbal de-escalation and stuff like that.
Okay. Got it. How did you did you take stuff that you learned from your time in the military and leading up to this? Like, is that part of what led you to this? Like, how did you guys end up starting this?
Yeah, so I think, you know, Alan's background, and then he had been doing church security stuff for a couple of years before I met him, probably like 5 or 10 years at that point. So he had a lot of experience in that, and then he already had kind of started changing his mindset from like a military or police outlook on security to like how security should work in a church.
Okay.
Because it's a different mindset. But yeah, a lot of our experiences and a lot of things we used to teach, we do still teach. You know, we don't teach everything we used to know. Like, you know, church security teams don't need to necessarily know how to do a field sobriety test, but they probably should know how to do CPR.
Yeah.
So, you know, we kind of tailor all the things that are in our head and, you know, make it work for church and safety.
Okay. How did you get into this?
Yeah. So when I got out of the military, moved down here in 2017, we started going to the church that Alan was part of. And my mom knew that he was the head of like the security team there. So she introduced me
At that particular
church.
Okay.
So yeah, she introduced us, and you know, I started shadowing the team. Not too long after that, I was, you know, serving on that safety team. And that was a pretty large multi-campus church that we were both at. And then, you know, we were doing those monthly trainings. And at one point, you know, like actually early on, we went to a conference and we were talking about some firearm simulators. So like projection screen, laser ammo, stuff like that. And how, you know, there's business models out there of like setting up like just some space people can come in and either, you know, just target practice and, you know, in a non-actual live range situation, or you get like zombie mode and you know, have it for like bachelor or bachelorette parties. They just come in with, you know, some booze and, you know, kill zombies, you know, on like, so it's like, but, you know, full size,
Sure.
you know, screens and stuff. So he had like mentioned that, and I was like, oh yeah, you could use that for a lot of like training applications too. So that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And then, you know, fast forward a couple years, I think we got done doing one of our classes, and he's like, you know, I think there's something here. Like, we might not make a ton of money doing it, but I think we can make a little money doing it. Especially when you take into account, like, if we don't just do it for churches, like we do this for, you know, individuals, you know,
businesses,
you know, whoever wants the training, we'll do the training for. So the church is just our passion. But, you know, we'll teach whoever wants to pay us to teach them.
Yeah. So when you guys are working with like businesses, what does that look like? Like what are the businesses typically looking for? What are you guys teaching them? And then why are they looking? What's the benefit that the businesses get from it?
I know that some insurance companies for businesses will give you like a break on your, you know, your premium.
Okay.
Like, let's say if you have such a percentage of your employees trained in CPR or stop the bleed, or you've done like an active shooter training in the last 12 months, then, you know, your premiums might be lower or something like that. But honestly, even with like some of the other skills we teach, like situational awareness, like I don't use situational awareness just when I'm at work. I use it. You use it all the time. You mentioned it earlier. You go into a place and you kind of try to read the room. Yeah. That's called situational awareness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we might go into a business and teach situational awareness kind of in a business context, but that's stuff you can use on the outside too. Same for Stop the Bleed. Like, I know Stop the Bleed has been like associated with like active shooter for a long time because that's just what it got associated with. But
that's what I think of.
Yeah. But honestly, like, you know, I read all these reports all the time. You know, some guy dropped a plate and like on this dishwasher, came up and cut his arm open. and he had to use a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, or else he probably would have bled out and died because I believe he was by himself, if I remember correctly. In Southwest Florida, boat propeller accidents,
Yeah.
diving accident. There's tons of stuff that can go wrong that would require the skills you learn and stop the bleed. It's just like for some reason everyone associates it with active shooter, and they're like, oh well, active shooter will never happen here. It's like, well, you don't know that, so
Sure.
get the training.
Yeah. Well, I always associated it with that.
Yeah.
I always just was like, oh, let's stop the bleed or active shooter. Like I assumed that they were two the same thing, of just people called it two different things.
Yeah. No, they're different for sure. And
so
we do a lot of stop the bleed training separate from active shooter training too.
And what goes into stop the bleed?
It's just knowing how to stop life-threatening hemorrhaging. So how to correctly apply a tourniquet, when to apply a tourniquet, and then if you can't apply a tourniquet, other things you can do to stop the bleed, like wound packing or direct pressure and stuff like that.
What's like the core concept that actually stops bleeding in most cases?
I guess the simplest way is compression. So,
Okay.
So like if you're using a tourniquet, what you're doing is you're compressing the artery against the bone, and that's stopping the bleed from the wound further down the limb.
So it's it's restricting the amount of blood that can actually make it through that.
Yeah, and if you do it correctly, you're just turning off the blood. Like if I put a tourniquet on my arm, there should be no blood or very little blood flowing through it. But then like wounds that you can't put a tourniquet into, you're trying to compress the source of bleeding against the bone, and that's by either direct pressure or packing the wound with gauze.
Okay, got it. And so if you're cutting off that blood flow to that, let's say your arm, you cut your arm down here, put a tourniquet on, you're cutting off that blood flow. I guess you have two things. It would shut off the blood flow to that hand, so you might have like a little damage from that, but you're also going to save your life, which is the main priority.
Yeah.
So does it like if you have to do that and you put a tourniquet on, you stop the bleeding, like, longer term, does it mess with any of your functions of that limb?
It can. So we talk about this all the time. So when I joined the military in 2007, they taught tourniquet was your last resort. If you put a tourniquet on a limb, the person's going to lose it.
Okay.
Fast forward to now, I think the window is about 110 minutes before there's any other damage to the limb caused by the tourniquet.
So you have a little under 2 hours to like basically keep it in a tourniquet, get them to medical assistance before that tourniquet actually starts to become a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, in Lee County, Florida, you're getting to a trauma center within 2 hours. That's probably pretty easy to do. Where that becomes an issue is, if you're out in the Everglades somewhere, then you're going to be pushing that time limit. But even still, I mean, there's a chart. I'm trying to picture it in my mind, but I know it's 111 minutes is that first point where injury can start happening. But it's like 4 hours until you start having like irreversible damage. So you got some time. And, I'd rather have a weird twitch in my finger
and be alive
than not.
Yeah, agreed. Well, and dude, if you're in that situation, like if that tourniquet breaks or you take that off, let's say after like an hour, is it just going to be like blood flow is just coming right back? Like, you'd probably start bleeding out again.
Yeah, in theory, I've never tried it.
No. Good.
Yeah, but we also train that unless you're an advanced medical provider, you don't remove tourniquets once you put them on.
Okay.
Just because you don't want to start the blood flow again, and then also after a certain time, there's like bacteria can start building up in the part that's been cut off, and once that cycles back through, you can get really ill. So a lot of times they'll load you up with antibiotics before
they release it
to kind of fight that off beforehand. So
like put the antibiotics in so that way when your body does its thing, you at least have
that's like way further down the path.
Okay.
That's like above my pay grade.
Got it. Okay. All right. And okay. So that's the stop the bleed side. Actually, one other question on that. If you
Yeah.
had you, I'm gonna sound like a fucking idiot, but so with a tourniquet,
Yeah.
like are there like you can buy an actual tourniquet that's dedicated to that, and then also if you don't have whatever the recommended tourniquet is, like what would you use?
Yeah.
A
So,
shirt or something?
yeah, I mean, you can make makeshift tourniquets, like that's what we did in the military when we first started, because they were like, tourniquets are bad, so they didn't even issue us tourniquets. They taught us how to make them. Um, but there's a handful of recommended tourniquets on the market. The Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care does the recommendations, and it's just based off of um, their use in the field. And then they do a bunch of testing on these tourniquets too, to make sure they're top of the line. They're made with the correct materials.
Okay.
Don't just go to Amazon and buy the 20 pack for $19.99, because those are all fake and they will break on you. And nothing's worse than a broken tourniquet when your life's at risk.
I can't return this right now. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. So like occasionally we'll buy like a tourniquet that's not recommended, but we only use it in training, because we know it's going to get a lot of repetition in training,
Got it.
and then we can tell if it's going to fail or not. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, if you're carrying a tourniquet or two dedicated to saving lives, make sure you buy a legit one.
And then what goes into, so like when I want to ask you about the active shooter stuff for sure, but when you meet with let's say a church or a business, well, what's the process like of going in, figuring out what they have in place, where you recommend, like, how do you guys run that process?
Yeah, sure. So typically, we offer to do a free assessment of the property. So we'll come in and we'll walk through with a facility manager or security manager, whatever the case may be. Alan has a bunch of certifications of, like he took like crazy college classes to learn the stuff he has to know. But like bush height and tree height and stuff. We'll look at all that stuff, and window film, and where your fire alarm control panel is. And, if it's a church and we're talking about kids, like how the kids area is set up, and recommendations for that. And a lot of times they're just pointing out stuff that concerns them, and then we talk through those points of concern, whatever they may be.
Okay.
Like one church had a door right by the stage. And they're like, oh, we're always concerned that someone, it's a short access right to the stage. And we looked and was like, well, it's not a fire exit, so just lock it. And they're like, oh, we never really considered, being able to lock this door.
They thought they had to.
Yeah, well, because it had a fire exit sign over it, but it wasn't a lit sign. It wasn't part of the actual fire corridor. So we're like, yeah, you can lock this door. It's not part of the actual fire escape plan.
Oh, okay. So you're not actually you're in compliance with
You're in
anything
compliance
related to the fire department, like in terms of escape routes. Okay.
Yeah. So we're just like, yeah, this isn't a legit or it's a legit fire exit, but it's not the part of it's called the fire corridor. It's like your direct access out the building.
Okay.
It's like, it's not part of that. They just had a sign above it so people knew it was an exit, more or less.
Okay. So if it's dark or whatever, people can actually see something. All right.
Something along those lines. Yeah. So usually we do that free assessment and walk around the building with them, talk about their concerns. Like I have some experience in physical security. So, just even how the parking lot's set up and direct access to the front door, stuff like that. All these crazy things that no one else thinks about except Alan and I. And then we usually sit down and try to figure out where their team's at. Like if their team's brand new, then we suggest doing like a couple multi-hour sessions to just get everyone spun up, everyone on the same page. We also offer to help them write their policy and procedures. And we try to do that before we do the training. That way we can train to their policies and procedures.
So everybody's at least on the same page. Like you can get a feel for it if you want to read it before you go do it. But then once you train it, it's like, we're going to train you to this. When we leave, you have the plan to fall back on.
Like we're going to train you to your standards, not just to like whatever cookie cutter training we do.
Sure.
we train you specifically to your location, to your policies and procedures. And then, we usually sit down and try to figure out what training. So if they have a team established, or like for a business who just needs to like hit certain training requirements, we sit down and figure out what training requirements they need. So whether that's, CPR, stop the bleed, and active shooter, or if it's, they want to add like situational awareness or verbal de-escalation, like if they have a front desk person, verbal de-escalation is probably really good for the front desk people to know, because they're the face of the company coming in.
And you're going to see all different types of people walk in that are going through different situations and phases of life.
Yeah, exactly. So, we suggest classes, find out what they want to do, and then, we go from there and set up training dates.
Okay. And so what are some of the main things that people reach out to you for? Like, why does this get on people's radar?
I think a lot of stuff going on in the news, man. Like, I'm part of a bunch of like church security Facebook groups, and a week doesn't go by without a handful of, either actual crimes committed at a church or like thwarted crimes because, of.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, like threats, people showing up with guns, like that's what catches everyone's eyes. Like, oh no, what if an active shooter comes to our church?
Yeah.
And it's a legit threat. If you've paid attention to the news in the last 5 years.
Sure.
And we do train that, but there's so much more that can be trained before that. Like we like to train like body language and pretty much trying to see the problem before it gets there,
Okay.
Because we tell them all the time, like in the church situation, if you can stop the problem in the parking lot, then it never gets inside your building. Like you keep them outside, call the sheriff's deputy, he comes in and handles business, or, the cop or wherever your jurisdiction is. But, be able to handle those situations before they even get inside is the best thing. So,
okay. So like how do you teach somebody that, or how do you start for them to like, okay, you've never thought about this before. What are the things that you like? How do you convey that to somebody who's never thought about somebody's body language in a security setting before?
That can be tricky. A lot of times when we're dealing with like church security, a lot of the guys have some sort of background in military or law enforcement or, EMS or ER work. They already have that mindset a little bit.
Okay.
So now we're trying to convert it from, okay, yeah, you were NYPD for 20 years, but now you're a volunteer safety officer at a church.
Yep.
So it's not quite the same.
Sure.
So, like one of the things people bring up is like property damage. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to go hands on for property damage because I'm not going to, risk getting an assault charge on me because this dude's kicking a hole in the drywall. Like, we'll just call the cops and let them handle business. That's what they're paid to do.
Sure.
And there's sometimes people are like, really? Like, you're not going to like try to drag them out of the church for that? And it's like, no, because like I said, it's like I'll come fix your drywall.
Yeah.
Like it's not as a big a deal as, possibly having an assault, like a personal lawsuit, and then them suing the church too, because some dude assaulted them.
Sure.
While they're kicking the drywall in. So,
well, and also that kind of violence does lead to additional violence. It is an escalation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we harp on de-escalation, and we never tell people to go hands-on when dealing with anyone, but, we will say like, if, you have the right to defend yourself and others. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with these people. But for the most part, like we just try to de-escalate and move the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to how do you train people? Like I said, a lot of them already have that mindset. And then for the people that don't, that people that just, are looking for a service or a serve team in the church to work on. And they're like, oh, this one seems cool. Like, they don't talk much and they're kind of wallflowers or whatever. Usually they're pretty attentive and they just want to learn about it because something piqued their interest to join that team.
Okay.
And for the most part, the team leaders or whatever, they should be vetting those people and deciding whether or not they're the
Good
right
fit for it.
a good fit. If they're the chatty Cathys who talk to everyone who comes in the door,
They're probably not going to be
probably
paying
not
attention
yeah
to the security.
probably not a great person to be watching everyone else.
You guys, this is our whole security plan. You guys. If you wanted to rob us, you could probably just go right in through this door. Yeah. That's not even a fire door.
But
so then what goes into the active shooter type training?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but the old model is the whole run, hide, fight.
Yep.
And a lot of people have heard that. We're actually trying to kind of move away from run, hide, fight, because it kind of just sounds like steps. Like, oh, run if you can run, hide if you can hide, and then last resort, fight. I was like, no, if a shooter kicks in that door,
fight.
The option right now is fight.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to go through the list, be like, all right, where can I run? Oh, nowhere. I can hide underneath the car. No, it's too late.
Yep.
And it was never taught that way, at least that I saw. But for some reason, it just got into people's minds. It's like step 1, run. Step 2, hide. Step 3, fight. And it's a fluid thing.
Because it logically makes sense. Like, if you can run away. If you can't run, then hide, because it's not as safe as running, but
Right.
It's safer than fighting. And then I guess fighting is like, I don't know, it in your mind, having never gone through it, the fighting is the most dangerous, the least safe, like the last resort kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know. It makes sense how people have done that, because I did that too. Because when I was working at Flight Docs, one guy, he used to be in the Army, and before we go to these trade shows like in Vegas or Orlando, he would always kind of give us a debriefing, like, "Hey guys, hate to be doing this with you, but like this is how the world is right now. So in case something happens, run, hide, fight." Like, I get how that can be perceived. So what is it moving towards?
Honestly, I can't remember the acronym now, but it's similar.
RHF.
For some reason, it's very similar to an acronym used in the military, which was detect, deter, delay. Okay. But it's not that.
Okay. So that's the first thing, because you're doing it for
so ingrained in me that every time I think of the new one, I can't get detect, deter, delay out of my head. But it's got a similar concept. Okay. It just, instead of making it sound like steps, it's kind of like it's a little bit more preventative. And that's a lot of what it's gauged towards is trying to identify what's going on first before it happens. And then we do, especially being in Florida, we do talk about, if you're armed, like an armed citizen, what your duty and responsibility is.
What your liabilities are too.
We don't really touch on that because we're not lawyers.
Okay, fair enough.
But kind of, if you're gonna be the hero, like here's the best way to do it.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And then so
what do you mean? All right, so in that case, let's dive into that. So what do you mean in that case?
So one of the trainings we've went through, and I can't remember if it's in the slides that we use when we teach or not, but pretty much it was like, if you're armed and you're going to pull your gun out to meet the threat head on, it was like, just pull the front sight, or put the front sight on your target and squeeze the trigger until the target falls. And then it's like, then lower your gun to the target again and keep squeezing until your gun's empty. It was just pretty much like, just load them full of lead.
Really?
And just keep loading them full of lead. And I don't disagree with that concept.
Okay. So it's like jarring to hear, but like, okay, what's the logic behind it?
You want to stop the threat. And this is how I trained my wife too. I was like, before I deployed, after we were married, I got her a gun. We went to a range that I had access to. I measured out from like our front or like our bedroom door to like the front door, which is like the furthest distance in our house. And I was like, just put all the rounds. And it was only 10 because it was California. I was like, put all the rounds into the inner circle of that, human shaped target. And she did. And I was like, yeah, just keep squeezing until it's done. And she asked the same question. I'm like, because you're not trained any other way.
Yep.
I was like, honestly, what's going to happen in that situation is that's what you're going to do anyways, just because that's how your body's going to react.
Because you're going to tense up. You're gonna be in that fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're gonna fall back to that, and you're just gonna be fucking shooting.
Yeah.
So, and I guess too, on the flip side, it's if you're willing to shoot somebody to kill them anyway, then go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay.
And
All right.
and like I said, it's just how you're going to respond anyways, because there's reports of, police involved shootings where the cops do the same thing and they're trained otherwise.
Yep.
But it's just like,
if you're in that spot, you feel like you're
once
die.
once you get there, like all like the stuff that happens to your body is like ridiculous. Like there's audio exclusion, tunnel vision. Like I was reading, I can't remember what book it was. I think it might have been On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, but he was telling a story about this cop. They were in a shooting, and afterwards they're like, "How many rounds did you fire?" And he's like, "I don't know, like 4 or 5." He had to empty the magazine, like 20 rounds or something like that. He's like, "How many rounds did your partner fire from a shotgun?" And he's like, "My partner fired a shotgun," and they were right next to each other.
Yeah.
He didn't hear it at all.
Which like, dude, one time I fired a shotgun without earplugs in and my vision went white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be in a situation where
you could be right next to your partner and not even know they fired.
He fired like 5 or 6 shotgun shells, and the other cop had no idea. Just because that's your body's just like
you're in a firefight.
Yeah, you're focused on the threat,
okay.
and your body's pretty much like, yeah, you don't have to pay attention to this. You don't need to know about that. It's like your bladder was full. We don't need that anymore. And it's just like, it's go time. So,
have you ever been in a situation like that when you're?
No, fortunately, I haven't. Cool. I've had to pull my weapon in the line of duty a couple times, but I've never had to engage anyone. And I'm thankful for it because I don't think you can come back from something like that sometimes. But I've been real close a few times, and I thank God that they either put the gun or knife down. I can't remember the actual situation.
Yeah. No, that's a nice. I'm glad it shook out that way for you.
Yeah, too. Yeah, me too. So,
dude, that's probably one of the reasons why, like, I think most people have a certain level of respect for like those elite military forces who can be in those situations, and like SWAT teams and things like that, who can be in those situations like where you are basically guaranteed to use lethal force, and people will be almost guaranteed to be using lethal force back at you.
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
To still keep like a sense of calmness and like a sense of like focus. And although your body is probably still for them pushing the same reactions, like to tamp that down and not let it interfere with your skill that you've learned. Like, that is an impressive thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I have a lot of respect for everyone who does that, because, I've dipped my toe in it, and,
not your thing.
Yeah. Well, if I had to, I could have done it, but it's just, kind of like where I'm at.
Yeah. And then you don't have to think about, dude, some of those, like, you do hear some of these stories of these guys talking about, like, some of these guys have like had to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I don't know. Some people, it seems like it's like water off their back, like like a water off a duck's back. But some people it sticks with, man. It's a heavy load to be like to have that, I don't know, weight on you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad I don't have to process that myself.
Yeah. No, and a lot of it I think is everything leading up to it. So like, Alan and I have talked about this because people have asked questions about it too, like because Alan and I both carry,
Mhm.
and they're like, how do you like justify carrying a gun and being a Christian? It's like I was like, because I've had that conversation with my creator, so I
Yeah.
I'm not one of the bad guys. I know that for sure. Because otherwise, we'd be having a different conversation. But I know that I was just put on this earth to protect people.
Yeah.
However that may be. So whether that was in my military service or now, doing church safety stuff or working as better protectors or working as an RN, I was on this. I was put here to help protect people.
Is that something that you've recently figured out, or is that something that you feel like you've had some instinctual level of that for a while, even if you didn't know exactly how to articulate it?
I think it probably was instilled in me when I was younger. Like I grew up doing karate, and
Okay.
My sensei back then was very very adamant about like you only use martial arts to defend yourself or defend others, and that just kind of like I think sunk in, and like I was in a couple fights as a kid, but it was always because I was backed into a corner and I didn't have any other options, and
Sure.
it was always I used just enough force to get out of the situation, and then that was it. It wasn't tackle the dude and get him to mount and just start ground and pounding until someone pulled me off him. It was like
Like, get off me.
throw a quick combo
Yeah.
and have an escape avenue and be able to run home and be like, Mom, I swear to God, I didn't start this fight.
Yeah.
And then even in the military, I've been in a couple scraps. Like I said, never had to use my firearm in the line of duty, but I've certainly hit people with a baton a few times and been involved in a few different tasings and stuff like that. So I'm not unfamiliar with combative people.
A little taste of tasings.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Little
Tasing's always fun.
little taser flight.
Yeah.
This is this many volts. This is this many volts.
Oh, it's all the same volts. Any movie that shows them changing the voltage is a lie. It's all one.
Is it?
Yep, 50,000 volts.
50,000 volts. Just
Yep, it's a good time.
yeah. So you have to get tased.
I've been tased 8 times.
Did your body shut down every time, or have you?
Yeah. So it doesn't. So that's another thing that the movies show. Like they get tased and they're like, and then they like pass out for like 5 minutes.
I've seen some cops videos where people get tased and they're like, they get more fired up.
Yeah. So so the taser works by just like messing up your neuromuscular system.
Okay.
So if it's working properly, your every muscle in your body pretty much flexes, essentially for as long as the taser's going. So like you get tased for 5 seconds, and I remember the first time I got tased, I counted to 5 probably 30 times because I was just counting so fast. But like I remember everything, and then as soon as it clicks off, it releases and you're done. So this whole like tase them in the neck, and then we have an hour to get them to the safe house. That's not how that works.
So what is the purpose of it then?
It's for a law enforcement purpose, or even for a civilian purpose. But law enforcement is to arrest under power. So like you tase and you have 5 seconds to get handcuffs on the person. So you're handcuffing them while they're being electrocuted, for lack of better terms.
And that doesn't transfer to another person. So if you get like the tongs, like where they shoot the prongs in, and it's like
yeah. So as long as you don't touch them in between where the two probes hit, or you don't grab the wire like I did one time, then typically you don't feel anything.
What was that like?
So you remember those like fake the handshake?
Yeah.
Like it kind of felt like that. I was wearing gloves, so it wasn't like skin on
Okay.
Wire contact, and the wires are insulated a little bit, but not completely. So like it was enough that like I felt it, and I was like, I can't let go of the hand because we finally got it behind his back. So I was just like, get the cuff on and, shake it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting.
Just fight through the tase.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like for me, it was just like those handshake pranks, like that feeling.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like my body was locking up or anything. It was just, it sucked. It just didn't feel good for the few seconds that we were handcuffing the guy.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Dude, so going back to the protector thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like now that that it's been instilled and you've been going through this, like how do you, and you seem pretty faithful, like you are religious, but like think about faith, think about God, talk with God, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like do you have any conversations basically like with God about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like so anytime I'm scheduled to serve in a safety role, I have a whole like prayer that I pray about it.
Okay.
Like pretty much, keep me vigilant and make me quick to be discernful. Like, like don't let any doubt like be like, oh, is that guy? Should I go talk to that guy? Like I look suspicious. Like just get rid of any of those feelings and stuff like that.
Those little hesitations.
Yeah,
that come up.
don't let any of my hesitations be like the reason something goes wrong. And then I just ask for him to help me because I know I have the skills, but I know I do all things through Christ. So make sure that I don't forget those skills in the moment, kind of thing. And then just I just pray like for protection in general over the building. Like it just put up a hedge of protection. Don't let me have to use my skills today.
Yep.
Because that's the best day is when I don't have to do anything.
Yep.
So yeah. So and then even in my Bible study time, I'll come across a verse that speaks to it, and I'll pray through, like verses like there's one verse in Exodus talking about how God is a warrior, and like I'll pray through that because I was made in His image, so if He is a warrior, that means I'm a warrior too, right?
Yeah. Well, and so when you say pray, do you mean like what does that mean to you? Like, how do you do that?
It can be done, different ways. Like sometimes I pray out loud, or under my breath, depending on the situation. Sometimes I'll just pray in my head, and then other times it's just like if I'm journaling or something like that. Sometimes the prayer just comes out on paper.
It's like a contemplation of what came from either the Bible or what somebody's talked about, and like almost like triangulating it with like your faith, like how you feel about that, like what message am I getting, like does this feel right,
Yeah,
is this in tune with God, basically?
That and yeah, and then just sometimes it's just a conversation, me just talking whatever's on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm processing through something, like at work we've had a couple deaths, well, not recently, but like in the last year we had a couple deaths that I had to process through because I'm pounding on the guy's chest for an hour waiting for EMS to get there, and I was like the last person to try to save this dude's life, and so yeah, you got to process through some of that stuff, and so sometimes it's just me having a conversation and just verbally puking.
Yeah.
And that way, that doesn't all come out on my wife and kids necessarily. They get the filter puke.
Yeah. Dude, I know what you mean. Like I try to do that kind of stuff. Like I write as much as possible. The podcast definitely helps just to get thoughts and ideas out and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
That's I view it very similarly because when I write and when I get these thoughts out, or for me when I play music and stuff like that, that's my way of getting back to a place of center and feeling like more in tune with God, with the universe, like with it in its entirety. And like those things, when I can kind of get my head clear, it doesn't even have to be like, I don't need to write something specific and make sure that I do this thing and all these specific things. But if I just get shit out of my head and like get those feelings out, like then I could start to process them And then it makes me more clear, more even, more level set for when I go into, like my relationships, being with my family, being at work. I can focus on things better. When I don't do that stuff, I'm like, I don't know, I get lost,
Yeah.
you know?
No, for sure. No, I write quite a bit too. Just like I remember in between getting out of the military and starting like EMT school, I drove for like a private airport well, not shuttle. We drove like town cars.
Okay.
And we didn't just do airport runs either. So like private car service, I guess.
Okay.
And like I can't tell you how many. So you know, like the little slips of paper you get for like visiting a neighborhood,
Yeah.
like the little passes or whatever. I can't tell you how many passes I have just with notes written on the back of them.
Really?
I'll be sitting at at the airport or like outside the restaurant while my customer's eating dinner or something, and something will come to mind, and that's all I have to write on. So I'll just grab a pen and just start scribbling stuff down. And sometimes I go back and reread it, or sometimes it was just I needed to get it out, and
Yep.
I'd never see that piece of paper again, but I'd never have to process through whatever I had to write again. So
Exactly.
yeah, for sure.
And then
Like,
over time, like you start, because you get it out, you start to see these trends, and you start to see like, oh, I keep thinking about this. This pattern keeps coming back. Like this is a
For sure,
recurring
yeah.
thing. It gives me a place to look at and be like, all right, that's where I need to focus. That's where I need to put some effort and put some energy towards solving or getting my thoughts right around them, or like, am I being a little bitch around this? Like, or am I, is there something more here that I can do? I don't know. I don't go back and read that stuff very frequently. It's not something that I'm like, I catalog perfectly.
right.
But, after you write something every day for 30 days, you kind of like can pick up that you've been writing that same thing over and over again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know, dude, it's, this is, I've been trying to, one of the things that I have not done well, because I was very cynical about religion and all that stuff. And I think I missed the concept of faith. Like I didn't understand it for a long time.
Right.
And like faith in yourself and self-love, and then faith that if you put things out there in the world and you actually move towards them and you do the best that you can, and all that, like things start coming together and helping you and guiding you on the path of like where you want to go. I was always, that's the self-doubt stuff that pops in. Like that always was what ran like my mental programming all the time.
Right.
And it's been like recently that shift has started to take place.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I don't know.
Because self-doubt's never a fun thing.
No, dude, it fucking sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm glad I went through that, because now I know, I get to see it in other people that go through that same thing, and I'm like, oh, hey, like, and now I can talk. It's like usually younger people too. Like I can talk to them and be like, hey, like all these things that you're saying are problems or excuses. I'm like, you're just making a lot of this up, unless like somebody's got a real problem. Like I'm not talking about that, but I can look at somebody who's like making things up and like, hey, you probably feel this way and this way and this way, and it's because of this, this, and this. Like, am I right? And like, yeah, how did you know that? I'm like, yeah, because I already did that, and it's like a waste of time. Like, I could save you 5 years if you just stop doing that. Like, you can avoid doing that. I did it for 15 years. If you just instead only do it for 10, like you're already 5 years ahead of the game, dude.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, easier said than done. But having that, like, the things that you do wrong for a long time sometimes can be like the most helpful for,
absolutely,
teaching somebody, and I don't know, getting them, like, it's my way of sharing a little bit about the reality of the universe with somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like stuff like that. But that prayer thing is interesting because there's a book called The War of Art.
Okay.
And so the guy talks about, before he sits down, he's a writer. He put together this book that explains like there's like forces that help you, forces that are against you, that prevent you from writing, doing all that stuff. But yeah, he sits down and does like this prayer to the muses before he starts writing, like give me the ability to essentially give me the ability to have a clear mind, to like follow where you guys are taking me with the story. Like I'm going to be here writing and like marshal those forces. It's funny how when you were saying that, that's what it reminded me of. Like, hey, when I go in, like, give me the strength to remember my training, to not freeze up, to not have that bit of self doubt. Like,
Yeah.
it's a similar, like, you're kind of releasing yourself to a higher power, but you're not like giving it away. Like, oh, I'll be fine no matter what. It's just like, all right, I'm putting a level of trust in you, and I'm gonna do my part.
Well, yeah, because I think a common misconception with like prayer, regardless of what you pray to, is that like I'm gonna pray and I'll wait for the answer.
Yeah.
There's this pastor Mark Batterson. He's up in D.C. and he's got this quote, and I'm probably gonna butcher it, but he says, you should pray like it depends on God, but work like it depends on you.
Yeah.
And like I always kind of knew that in the back of my head, but when I heard him say it, I was just like, yeah, that's good. Like,
nailed it.
and it's funny because like we had friends down from Rhode Island a few years ago, and her husband was out of work or something like that, and she's like, yeah, he's just believing that God's going to give him a job, and I was like, yeah, is he putting out resumes? Because that's probably the best way to get a job. And it's like like, yeah, you can pray for the job, but if you're not, and I'm not saying that God can't divinely intervention you into your job, but like if you're not putting out the work, then
yeah,
like you got to do something down here too.
Yeah, it's not this blind faith, and it's you do have to put that effort in, and I'm realizing that with a bunch of stuff, and I don't know, just trying to take things to the next level. Like I realize in many aspects of my life, I'm a blue belt right now, like almost in so many things, and I kind of have this like blue belt mentality with stuff, and I realize like, oh, okay, if I want to get to the places I want to be, I do have to like adopt a black belt mentality.
Yeah.
And they're like, when you look at them, there's never any situations when you're rolling where they're like, oh man, that was really hard. Or like, I didn't really feel that good today. It's like, oh man, I'm getting old and I can't get smoked by these young kids anymore who are like muscling everything. I literally need to fundamentally change how I do things so that way I can get ahead. And I'm realizing that now, like in music, in work, in jujitsu, in like all these things, I'm kind of hitting that blue belt ceiling where you're like, you're competent at things, you're proficient, but there's always like that level of like, well, I don't know if I'm really ready to go to the next level. And like, you don't fully commit to the move. You don't fully like trust yourself to go do this thing. And so I kind of had that realization a couple months ago. I'm like, all right, I'm going to fuck that, dude. I'm moving everything forward.
Yeah.
And I got to think as if I'm already at that next level.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's funny because I feel like in the last couple of months, I've felt that change from you in jiu-jitsu. Even like
really,
like I was talking to someone the other night, and because professors coming down, and they're like, "Oh, who do you think's up for promotions?" I'm like, man, if Chris isn't close to his purple belt, I don't know who is. Like,
I don't think I'm at the purple belt zone.
I don't know. But like I said, I feel in the last couple of months, like some in your game has changed, and it might be just that mentality. Like I need to step it up and start rolling like a purple belt.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to be. But like I remember having the conversation because we were talking about people, who are getting ready for promotions. I'm like, man, I feel like rolling with Chris is like rolling with a purple belt.
Sweet.
So
cool.
I'm just a new blue belt too. So what does my opinion really matter?
You're not a new blue belt. How long have you had your blue belt?
I got it in April.
Really?
Yeah, I just got it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were a blue belt for a while.
No, just in April.
Dude, it has been a big change because I was showing up and I was being a little bitch for a while. Like, I don't know what I was doing, but I don't know. I'm really tired today. And like things like that. It's just like, nah. let me just focus on like what I need to do. I'm going to pay attention. I'm like, get in the zone and just move around where I need to. Let me pay attention like a little more to the details when coach is teaching stuff. And like, yeah, it's just had a huge change. I don't know the details. It's been a mindset shift.
Yeah.
It's been the biggest thing. Like, I don't know, just trying to have like a little bit more faith in myself, not doubt it so much. So that way when I roll against some of these blue belts that are now in there that are legitimately twice as strong as me.
Yeah.
Like,
we got some beastly blue belts at the gym,
dude,
man.
That I don't have to like try to avoid that. I'm like, all right, let me go roll with that person. Like, let me go into it, and what's going to happen will happen. But like, all right, I'm going to be present. I'm not going to let just somebody like take my back or let somebody just like, I'll go on the bottom and get steamrolled. Like, no, dude, it's the time's up for that. I did that for way too long. Now I'm just like, all right, moving ahead.
Yeah. No, I think I need to probably focus on that a little bit more. Because it was like, I felt like for so long I was getting smashed. So I got really good at playing from my back.
Same.
And then even when I was rolling with, guys that were under me, rank wise, I would like pull guard and stuff. And
then you end up getting smashed by people that really are not better than you, but you have like let them be better than you for that time.
And that happened a couple times where I was like, why did I let that guy get on top?
Yeah.
It was like the only reason he smashed me is because he's bigger than me and I couldn't move his body. Like he was just laying on me.
But then really it's like the only reason he smashed me is because I let him.
Exactly. It's initially. Like that was just like self-punishment. Like, why did I do that in the first place? And
when you let somebody like kind of smash you too, you end up using so much more energy in that whole span than if you just like got out ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely learned how to conserve my energy when I'm under someone, and it was from rolling with Andrew a bunch.
He'll teach you.
It's like, because it'll start good, I'll be on top, and then he'll flip the switch, and then I'm like, all right, well,
I can't move for the next 3.5 minutes.
I'll protect my neck, and I'll get a frame, and I'll wait for him to get bored and move. And
let's hope that approach works.
I'll just live there until not to use this forsaken word in jiu-jitsu, but I'll just like make little micro adjustments and keep trying to get my frame a little bit better and get a little bit more space. And then there's been a couple times I've gotten out, and most of the time he just continues to smash me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a couple guys like that.
Very familiar with the feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he's a beast, man. But well, dude, thanks for coming and doing this.
This was fun.
It. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I don't think so, man.
Where can people find you and like actually sign up for Better Protectors?
Yeah, so you can go to our website. It's just betterprotectors.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and just I think it's David Parkinson. I don't know, how do you search for people on LinkedIn? Yeah,
we'll put the link in.
But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I'm kind of more active because I can do that at work. All the other social media pages are locked down, so I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. But yeah, Better Protectors is on Instagram, Facebook, our website. Yeah. So if you're in Southwest Florida and you're looking for some sort of training, we also do a ton of firearms training. We're both firearms instructors. So if you're looking for any of that, we can do it.
Sweet. All right. Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everybody. Peace. Cool.